The Pacific coast of northern Peru is a desert that has forgotten how to reign. Yet, in the 12th century, a massive city rose directly from these shifting, unforgiving sands. They called it Chan Chan. Even in its heavily eroded, ruined state today, it remains the largest Adobe metropolis ever constructed on the face of the earth. It was not built merely to withstand the harsh elements. It was built to choreograph them, turning the very earth into a canvas of the sea. Look at the walls. They are not merely boundaries to keep the desert out. They are angled precisely to catch the coastal breeze, funneling the wind down these narrow corridors, cooling the air before it ever reached the king. A machine for living, powered entirely by the breath of the ocean. The Chimú did not just survive the desert, they engineered it, creating an environment where the ruler was insulated from the harshness of the world outside. At its peak, Chan Chan housed 30,000 souls within a labyrinth of 10 walled citadels, each a universe unto itself, decorated with the symbols of the sea. When a king died, his entire citadel was sealed, becoming his mausoleum. A new king was then required to build a new one from scratch. The city grew like a coral reef, adding a new layer of monumental architecture with every generation, a physical manifestation of dynastic succession. Inside these sealed complexes, the walls were carved with nets, waves, and pelicans, a permanent reminder that the empire's lifeblood was the ocean.
But the sea is a fickle provider, and a city of 30,000 could not be fed by the tide alone. They had to master the earth itself. To feed the city, they carved the earth, digging massive reservoirs down to the water table, creating artificial oases in the middle of the desert. They planted gardens in these deep pits, shielding the crops from the salt wind. Water was not just a resource here, it was a religion. The architecture demanded absolute control over nature. But control is merely an illusion we tell ourselves to sleep at night, a temporary lease on a shifting world. In the 15th century, the ocean changed its mind. The El Niño currents warmed, pulling moisture from the sea and darkening the skies over the desert. For a desert that had not seen significant rain in centuries, it was not a storm. It was a deluge, an apocalyptic breaking of the world's rules.
The Adobe walls, brilliantly engineered to catch the gentle coastal breeze, had no defense against falling water. They began to dissolve. The wind corridors became rivers of mud. The careful geometry of the city was washed away in a matter of hours. The carved pelicans wept brown tears into the flooded plazas. The symbols of the sea were being returned to the earth. The reservoirs, dug to hoard every drop of water in a drought, were now overwhelmed by it. The machine broke. The choreography failed. What do you do when your home becomes your tomb? When the very walls that protected you are the reason you cannot leave? They did not die out in a final, glorious battle against invaders. The enemy was the climate itself, and it was not finished with them. The winds returned, but now they carried the desert. Dunes swallowed the outer walls, filling the labyrinth with silence and sand. The specific grief of realizing your masterpiece was only ever a temporary lease. The city was not conquered. It was simply rendered obsolete. They packed their tools, left the greatest Adobe city on earth to the wind, and walked away into the hills, abandoning their history to the sand. Today, the ruins sit under a clinical gray-beige sky. The walls are eroded nubs, stripped of their geometry, their grandeur reduced to mounds of dirt. We look at the ruins and see a failure of engineering, a civilization that could not adapt to a changing world. But they were not broken by a flaw in their design. They were broken by a world that changed its rules, a climate that shifted beyond their capacity to adapt. Chan Chan was a masterpiece of environmental harmony, a city that breathed with the wind and drank from the earth, until the earth and the wind turned against it. The specific grief of inheriting a history that was edited before you arrived, of walking through the ruins of a world that forgot it was temporary.
They did not flee in panic. They walked away with the quiet dignity of a people who knew their time in the desert was over, leaving their masterpiece to the wind. The throne was left empty, the reservoirs left to dry, the wind corridors left to fill with sand, as the city exhaled its final breath and became a ruin. It was the architecture of the breeze, a city that lived and breathed with the ocean,
a triumph of human ingenuity that lasted for 400 years. The ocean forgot them, the rivers changed their paths, and the desert reclaimed its own, leaving behind only the silence of the wind and the memory of the sea. We dig through the layers of sand and mud, trying to find the logic in their collapse, the specific grief of inheriting a history that was edited before we arrived.
They built a world from the earth beneath their feet, shaping the mud into walls that touched the sky, believing they had built something that would last forever. The silence of Chan Chan is not empty. It is heavy, filled with the weight of the 30,000 souls who walked away, leaving their masterpiece to the wind. The coldness of things outlasting memory, the broken clay surviving the hands that shaped it, the walls outliving the city they were built to protect. We walk through the ruins of a world we barely remember, a civilization that built a masterpiece of the breeze, only to be erased by the very earth they sought to tame. The ocean continues to churn, the wind continues to blow, and the desert continues to shift, indifferent to the rise and fall of the cities built upon its shores.